Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the December 1st council meeting. I'm going to call it to order now and invite you to join me in singing O Canada. I'm going to call on Councillor Forder to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Now, I'm just going to ask you to join me for a moment of silent reflection on our business today. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? I see none indicated, but should it occur to you, at any time you can bring it forward. Announcements, and I'm going to go right directly to Deputy Mayor Keaveney because you usually start us off and we have some big news today. So why don't you take it over?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And if our minds are in sync, I think the big news has to do with our water plant inspection. And we are so incredibly proud of our team led by Emily Howard, who has just achieved 100% in the inspection, both in Meaford and in Leith. And that's absolutely incredible. And I don't think the average resident, because we would just have no need to understand the depth of knowledge or the effort that goes into winning such an absolute amazing feat of 100%, because it's a 3-day inspection and it is stringent, and we all know how important safe drinking water is. So congratulations from all of us to Emily and her team at the water plant.
Maybe before we go to other announcements, just can I ask CAO Everett if you would like to just comment on that? Because I've seen, lots of great marks, 97, 98, 99. To get 100 in both Leith and Meaford is quite an achievement.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It is it is a great achievement. The protocols and the legislative requirements for safe drinking water are significant, and I think by having the results that we did, it allows for the residents in Meaford, knowing that the two water treatment plants that we do have are serviced by. It's a big challenge to be able to maintain and operate the water distribution and the storage as well as the treatment. So a good, big, huge congratulations to staff for being able to get that, and look forward to going through the inspection process again next year.
Thank you. Other announcements from our side of the horseshoe? I'll start with Councillor Greenfield.
Your Worship, I'm sure gentleman to my right is going to jump in with Christmas on the Bay, so I will gladly leave that announcement to him. But as part of our local Christmas celebrations on the evening of Sunday, December 21st. Now, that's a few weeks away yet, although not that far. The annual Festival of the Nine Lessons and Carols is going to be presented at historic Leith Church. There will be obviously a lot of singing. There'll be a carolist quartet, the Georgian Bay Children's Choir, plus I understand guest soloists and readers at that celebration on the 21st. It's a free will offering. And since the church is limited to about 150 people in the audience, the suggestion is to get there well before 7:15. And I understand the Leith Church, the historic Leith Church, will be lamplit for the evening. Thank you.
Councillor Yurick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just buckle up. This is going to be a bit of a speech. It's a long one, so there's a lot happening obviously this week. As you've noticed, if you've driven downtown Market Square, that you'll see Christmas on the Bay is being constructed as we speak. And of course that it happens from December 4th to the 7th, which is Thursday to Sunday. The times are 2 to 8 on both Thursday and Friday, 10 to 8 on Saturday, and 10 to 4 on Sunday. Saturday coincides with the Santa Claus parade, which Santa will also be in Meaford Hall afterwards to speak to any of the kids that want to take advantage of that. And then, of course, on Sunday, concert with that is also Disney's One Magic Christmas being shown by the municipality. And on Thursday afternoon, one component of Christmas on the Bay that they're very proud of is their DEI component. They go to great lengths, and of course our volunteer of the year, Mary Solomon, is always champion of that. And there is a special concert that's happening that afternoon that's in conjunction with Dancing with Parkinson's. Some of that will actually even be live streamed or elsewhere, so that's very exciting as well. So there's an awful lot happening this week, and we just hope people can get out and do a little pre-Christmas shopping, and but also to take in this. The thrust of this event is try and be economic development for Meaford. So not just for people to come to the market, but hopefully to get around town, see some of the other shops, because in concert with that, there's also going to be, that's when the voting starts for the best decorated wreath contest. And there's a Give the Gift of Meaford. It's a local shop local draw. And there will be a wreath and a basket draw at the end on the December 23rd. So this is an opportunity to really kind of shop Meaford and visit Meaford. So we're looking forward to this event.
Thank you. I'll come, let's do you again, and I'll come around the rest. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted to add a couple of things for this weekend. Councillor Yurick has done a terrific overview, but also on the Saturday morning, Recognizing Rotary, they'll be doing a cookie decorating. It's not a contest, it's open to all the children who want to come and decorate cookies at Meaford Hall on Saturday morning. And also on Sunday, December the 7th at 2 o'clock, the Golden Heirs will be hosting their annual Christmas concert at the United Church. It's entitled this year's Snowfall of Songs, and it is by donation, and those donations go back into the community to school music programs. So I know it'll be a tough decision as to whether to see the concert or the movie, but for anyone who is inclined, that's 2 o'clock at the United Church. And I also wanted to mention at Grey Roots coming up again on the 6th, but also on the 13th. So you may have some free time on the 13th to attend Morriston by Candlelight. And this is an absolutely beautiful event where all of the buildings, the schoolhouse, the general store, and so on at Morriston Village are all lit up by candlelight. And it's a tour, and each one is hosted by volunteers, and it's a chance to learn about some history of how folks lived back in that time in the 1800s and early 1900s. So that is from 4 until 8 o'clock, again, December the 6th, and also on the 13th. You do need to get tickets. And if you just look at the Grey Roots website, you'll see right away on the front page a spot to book your tickets. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Ennis.
Thank you very much. Through you, this isn't so much an announcement of anything that's happening, but something that I participated in a couple of weeks ago. And just looking at today's agenda, I thought it might be worth mentioning. On November the 19th, I had an opportunity through my personal life to attend Bruce Power's Huron Unity exercise as an observer, which is essentially an event where they conduct every couple of years in coordination with like local authorities and different levels of government to help make sure that everybody's sort of on task and well planned should some type of incident occur at the facility. So I attended on the 19th when they were focused on something that would, essentially be like a radiological leak or an actual nuclear event. And so myself and the other observers, we all met in the auditorium across from the Bruce Power Visitors Center at the Nuclear Innovation Institute. And we essentially had a feed of the Emergency Management Center and got to see how they work internally. It was kind of interesting to learn that I just assumed it would be if something like that were to happen, like the government would kind of get together and handle it. But actually, it's the company that handles it with governmental liaisons in the room. Yeah, it was really good to kind of see that coordination and watch them figure out how they would get their resources and their equipment in place. I think my biggest takeaway overall came from just asking questions of like how they actually create a simulation like that and try to find like an actually realistic example of things going that wrong. And it was cool to learn that there are some people who like that's their whole job is to figure out how do we come up with something that is actual that we haven't accounted for that could go wrong in this series of events. And then obviously in the next couple of weeks, we'll figure out how to make sure that actually doesn't happen because we found this loophole. So I just thought it would be kind of worth mentioning because that as we start looking at some large projects in our region, there are some good examples of really good planning and emergency management. As long as people take stewardship really seriously, we can work to account for things in a pretty adequate way. But it was a really interesting event, and as always. Bruce Power is always hiring. So if anybody in the community is interested, check it out. It's a pretty cool place.
Thank you. Is there anything on the other side of the horseshoe from staff? All quiet on the Western Front. Okay. So we'll move on to public participation, and members of the public are encouraged to provide council with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released and are supposed to be limited to 10 minutes, although we have two presentations today that are going to take a little longer and are very deserving of our attention and a little bit of a flexibility on time as these are important presentations. So to do that, get involved as a member of the public, make a deputation or ask a public question, you must register in advance with Legislative Services by 10 in the morning on the day of, and you can do that by contacting Deputy Clerk at meaford.ca or calling 519-538-1060, extension 1110. An email with access information is sent to those who register for remote participation. Deputations are limited to 5 minutes and public questions to 2 minutes. And just a reminder, the public can view this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel, www.meaford.ca/YouTube. So our first presentation today, I'm going to call Tim Lanthier, Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, to the podium, and he's going to be speaking to us about Bill 68 and the proposed changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and Ontario's conservation authorities. Tim?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's good to be here today. It's be nice to be here under different circumstances, but it is good to see you and talk to you, and I do appreciate you taking the time to hear me this morning. So as you mentioned, there's two items that have come forward from the provincial government recently that I'd like to talk to Council about because they have a big impact not only on conservation authorities, but on all of the municipalities throughout the province of Ontario. Those two items are Bill 68 and specifically those portions of Bill 68 that deal with Conservation Authorities Act, and then an Environmental Registry of Ontario posting that's out right now about amalgamating Ontario's 36 conservation authorities into 7 conservation authorities. So the Bill 68 is what I'll start with. And Bill 68, the changes it makes to the Conservation Authorities Act largely have to do with the creation of a new provincial body known as the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. And this is a new agency that would, among other things, oversee the governance of conservation authorities, oversee the transition from the current 36 conservation authorities to a consolidated 7 conservation authorities, promote consistency in policies, standards, and fees for the programs. And that's one that I'm going to come back to later, and I'd like you to keep that in mind, that promoting the consistency, standards, fees, policies. To assess and report on the effectiveness of conservation authorities back to the province, to oversee and evaluate the financial performance of conservation authorities, to guide and evaluate strategic planning by authorities to ensure that it aligns with provincial objectives. So this is another one that I'm going to come back to later. To support the development and implementation of standardized permitting system, like an online permitting system, lead the development and implementation of digital strategies, support strategic investment in programs and services, and then to advise the Government of Ontario in respect to those programs and services and how they're functioning. So there's a common theme you might pick up on here is that a lot of these things are governance of organizations that are not a provincial entity and actual operations of entities, conservation authorities that are not a provincial entity. So through these changes, the minister can provide directions to the new authorities, and that doesn't really change anything. The minister can provide direction to authorities now. The minister can also provide directions to this new Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. And just so that we're all talking the same language, ministerial direction is similar to an order, a legislated order, except that it doesn't have to go through the legislative process. The minister can decide on a direction, can order that direction, and then that direction must be followed. The new agency, in turn, can issue directions to conservation authorities. And these include, but are not limited to, these items that are listed in the slide deck of key performance indicators, service standards, IT, procurement, training of board members and employees, budgeting, asset management planning, and strategic planning. These are all operational items of an entity that are now conceivably overseen by the province. So the agency, in terms of covering the cost of running it, has the ability to apportion these costs out to the regional conservation authorities. Because conservation authorities have the ability to apportion their costs, as you know, to municipalities, this piece of the legislation should be read as the new provincial agency has the ability to apportion its costs to you, the municipality. It's indirect, but it's black and white. And then on this slide, because when I prepared this slide deck for council, Bill 68 was in second reading and being debated by the government. Last week, it received third reading debate, and royal assent. So effective Thursday, November 27th, Bill 68 is law. I'll go into some of this stuff in a little more detail as we get on in the presentation, but right now I just want to provide everybody with a high level. So the ERO posting, or the Environmental Registry of Ontario posting, is about the amalgamation or the consolidation of Ontario's 36 conservation authorities into 7. So Bill 68 is not open for discussion and comment. It's happened. The ERO posting, however, is, and that's open until December 22nd. In this, obviously, there'd be a consolidation from 36 down to 7. I think as part of this, it's important to recognize the reasons that the province is proposing to do this. So 2 drivers have been put forward. One is to improve efficiencies and effectiveness, generally around permitting and planning. So one facet of the work that conservation authorities do. The other driver is that too many municipalities share borders with too many different conservation authorities. I want to note that there are 444 municipalities in the province of Ontario. There are 36 conservation authorities. So I understand that not every municipality is within the jurisdiction of a conservation authority, but for easy math, that's a 1 in 12 ratio. So it's not a huge amount of overlap or duplication. The province is consulting on this proposed change, and the questions that they've asked are listed on the slide deck as what are the key factors to support a successful transition? What are the opportunities for benefits of this structure? What are your suggestions for what a governance model would look like? Because this has not been provided by the province. How do we maintain transparency in a consultative budgeting process? And how can a regional model strengthen local relationships? So these are the questions that the province wants answers on. I would encourage you to also think about the questions, what are we going to benefit from by doing this? What is the cost benefit analysis? Where is it? What's the business case for this? Is it going to cost municipalities more? And I can almost guarantee you the answer to that is yes. How will our voice as local rural municipalities be maintained in this new regional model? And I'm going to get into a little bit of this more in a second. So if you look at the slide that's up there right now, this is what the spread of conservation authorities across the province looks like today. There are 36, mostly in southern Ontario, a smattering of conservation authorities in the north. I don't know the exact reason for that, but I suspect it has to do with most of the land in the north being crown land, or a large portion of lands being crown lands, and the predominant population base for the province of Ontario being in the south. This is what the new regional model will look like. So there'll be 7, as we said, 1 region to represent Eastern Ontario, 1 region to represent the eastern part of Lake Ontario, 1 region to represent the central part of Lake Ontario, which coincidentally is exactly the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. They're not amalgamating. 1 to represent the western portion of Lake Ontario, 1 regional conservation authority for the entirety of Lake Erie. And then the one that we would be within is 1 conservation authority for the entirety of Lake Huron and Lake Superior. So within our regional grouping is Lakehead, which is in Thunder Bay. So ours would extend from Lake Simcoe in the northeast, across Georgian Bay, and then down Lake Huron to south of Grand Bend. So here's my crudely whited out portion of the conservation authorities that are not part of this region. And you can see it's within our region, Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, Nottawasaga, Grey Sauble, Saugeen Valley, Maitland Valley, Sauble Bayfield, and Lakehead, which is up in Thunder Bay. This is what it looks like with those watershed divides. So a couple of things I would point out about this. Currently, Grey Sauble covers an area of about 3,200 square kilometers, and it's a big area. In the new regional model, the Huron Superior Regional Conservation Authority, which is the one that Meaford would fall into and Grey Sauble would be absorbed into, is over 23,000 square kilometers. The country of Belize is 22,000 square kilometers. So our new region is bigger than a small country. It's 4 times bigger than PEI. We want to put it in Canadian context. Currently, we have 8 member municipalities with 11 members. Members are decided by population. So Meaford has 2 members. Georgian Bluffs has 2 members. City of Owen Sound has 2 members. Each of our other municipalities has 1 member at the table. Everybody's voice is heard. It's transparent. It's democratic. It's open. In the new regional model, there will be 80 member municipalities. You will not all get a seat at the table. There's no governance structure proposed right now, but you can't have an 80-member board. It's untenable. Other municipalities included in this region are the City of Barrie, the City of Newmarket, the City of Aurora, the City of Richmond Hill, the City of Thunder Bay. I want you to think about that when you think about what level of a voice our rural municipalities are going to have at this table. So conservation authorities are established on a watershed basis, and I'm sure I'm maybe telling you something you already know here, but I just thought it was important to go over. A watershed is the catchment area of water running downhill, to put it in its simplest forms. Water falls as rain on the landscape, rolls downhill until it gets into a stream, creek, river, and then it flows out, in our case here, into Georgian Bay. Some of our watersheds flow into Lake Huron. This is an important model, and granted, the government is proposing to keep this model just on a much larger scale. But the reason that it's important that we keep a watershed model instead of a municipal boundaries model is that you can't control what your neighboring municipality does, but it might impact you. And so for a municipality like Meaford, who is on the shoreline at the downstream end of the Big Head River, things that happen in municipality of Grey Highlands or things that happen in Chatsworth may have an impact on what happens in your town here. And if it wasn't for a watershed basis, you would have no control over that. So that's one of the primary reasons for the watershed model, certainly in natural hazard management. But when we look at natural heritage, so environmental factors, it's much more relevant. Environmental factors cover beyond watershed boundaries too, but it's still a relevant delineation compared to an arbitrary box that municipal boundaries are formed under. So when we look at why and how conservation authorities were created in the first place, there's a couple of important things I want to talk about. One is we were not created by the province. We were created by municipalities. Originally in the Conservation Authorities Act, 2 or more municipalities could petition the province to create a conservation authority because that was something that was deemed to be important locally to meet the needs of the community. What the province did is 2 important things. One, they created the Conservation Authorities Act in 1946 that provided the framework to allow municipalities to do this. 2, they came to the table with funding. So in the beginning, 1946, the province provided half the funding and the municipality provided half the funding. Today, Grey Sauble, for our conservation authority, generates about 49% of the funding in our budget. Our municipal partners provide about 44%, and the province covers that remaining 6 or 7% of the budget. Most of that is source water protection. Very important program, but not one of the drivers for this change. The natural hazards program that does seem to be a driver for this change, 1% of that budget's coming from the province. And what we're looking at is rolling things up into a larger region where your price of service will go up. I fail to see how it can't. And your voice at the table will go down. And again, I can't see how that's not possible, even if you are represented by a representative. It's not likely to be somebody specific from your council. It could be, not every time, but certainly not in the same division that voice is divided today. So high level, conservation authorities, again, there are 36 of us across the province. 14 million people in the province live within the jurisdiction of a conservation authority. We complete over 30,000 planning and permit reviews a year collectively. We manage almost $4 billion worth of flood control infrastructure. We protect lives and prevent over $150 million worth of damages every year. We work with landowners to plant about 1.3 million trees a year, and we provide over 3,500 kilometers worth of trails in green spaces across the province that are visited by over 10 million visitors annually. When we bring that home to our local area here, Grey Sauble has been around for almost 70 years. So we started as the North Grey Region Conservation Authority in 1957. So think of it as almost everything east of Owen Sound. It included Owen Sound as well. And the Sauble Valley Conservation Authority in 1958. In 1985, those 2 conservation authorities amalgamated. Now they already had the same staff working out of the same office with the same board of directors. So it was an amalgamation in name and legality, but functionally, it was the same entity. I already talked about the makeup of our board and the coverage of our municipalities and the fact that we're about 3,200 square kilometers now. We have 5 major rivers. So the Big Head is one of them. The Beaver to the east is another. The Sydenham, the Potawatomi, and the Sauble. Those are our major watersheds within Grey Sauble's region right now. We extend from about the town of Collingwood, Blue Mountains border to Lake Huron on the western boundary. We employ about 28 full-time, part-time staff, plus the summer students that we bring on in the summer. And our budget's about $4.2 million annually. So a few things that I'd like you to think about is there are 2 primary drivers as we see it, or as we're being told, for this proposed change from the province. One is that too many municipalities share a border with too many conservation authorities. What we're starting to hear from municipalities across the province is they don't see it that way. And I'm not here to tell council how to think. I'm just here to provide information and provide some other questions that you might want to ask yourself and ask the province. But what we are hearing is that we've heard anecdotally that Middlesex, who is a municipality that actually has 5 conservation authorities, they're okay with that. So that's one of the drivers. If the change for this municipal driver is to improve efficiency and reduce costs, we haven't seen the business case to prove this, and we haven't seen the cost benefit analysis to prove this. What we have seen, or heard rather, is we've heard from the minister himself that no jobs will be lost. So there may be a restructuring of those jobs, but no jobs will be lost. So right off the hop, your ability for cost savings is pretty minimal. We've also heard from the Chief Conservation Officer, who is a deputy minister, that no local offices will be closed by the province. Well, now I see, there's less savings now because you're still operating that office and all the costs that go into operating an individual office. And quite honestly, I fail to see how you couldn't do that with a 23,000 square kilometer area and still have boots on the ground local service. But now you've added a regional government. You've got the Regional Conservation Authority, and it has an office, it has staff, it has a board. So those are costs. You have to consider that within this region, one of the existing conservation authorities is going to pay their staff more than everybody else does. And we have to assume that there's likely going to be a leveling of costs across the board. We also now have a provincial agency, the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency, that oversees everyone. And they apportion their costs back out to the conservation authorities who portion those costs to the municipalities. So I fail to see how the costs will go down. So if we're looking to improve efficiencies with shared borders and reduce duplication, now I start to wonder to what end? And is this something that actually requires the tearing down of 80 years worth of local community service to build it up into a more bureaucratic system? If we look at efficiencies, I'm yet to see the provincial agency who provides effective service on the ground and can pivot quickly. So this is not a knock at any staff in any local provincial offices. It's the system that they're operating under. But when we have to deal with provincial agencies for approvals, it does not go quickly. So some of the things that we need to think about are, how can the boots on the ground be maintained in an area that's 23,000 square kilometers wide? How do your voice continue to be heard at a table that now has 80 municipalities that need to be represented, going from a system where currently there are 8? If the changes are to drive planning and permitting efficiency, does it require amalgamation of 36 conservation authorities into 7? So the province, and the item I pointed out earlier that I wanted to come back to, the province said we need standardized fees, we need standardized policies, and we need standardized guidance. We need a digital permitting platform that is standardized across the province. Great, we support all of that, but you don't need to tear apart the organizations and merge them into a giant super organization to do it. They have legislative capacity, they can create those things, and they will be used by conservation authorities if they do. The other thing is this implication, or this the suggestion that conservation authorities are stopping development. That's the reason we're not getting the promised number of houses in the ground. I don't believe that to be true. Even trying to remove any bias that I might have, I still don't believe it to be true. And the reason is I can think of several subdivisions throughout our watershed that have had approval for years, and there's no sod been turned on them. There's some subdivisions being built as I come into Meaford from Owen Sound right now. Those had approval a long time before they started actually breaking ground and building. I think there are a lot of other market conditions that are the problem. Also, there's been a rapid amount of change in the last 6 years, not just for conservation authorities, but for municipalities as well. I'm not sure that we've had time to actually see the impacts of that previous change before making further change. Some of the other things you might want to think about, though, are what does the governance model look like? The province has asked that question, but they haven't provided any insight to us anyway at this point. Will the local offices remain? We believe we've been told that they will now, so I think that's positive. But will local autonomy be maintained? So if there's a new provincial agency that's above the regions even, that's going to be looking at operating items, that's going to be looking at governance items, are the governance boards that will be in place effective? And are conservation authorities able to make effective change on the ground that helps our communities? We're concerned about what's going to happen to the reserves that have been built locally. Will those just be dispersed into a larger agency? And will that investment come back to our local communities? So like I said, Grey Sauble raises about 49% of our budget right now through work that we do locally in the community. Our parking revenues at our properties generate a substantial amount of income for our organization, and that money is used to invest back into properties locally. We have no guarantee that that's going to be the case in the future. That money will still be raised, but where it goes and where it's spent, we have no guarantees on. We don't know about donations that have happened over the years. Will volunteerism, which is an important part of the work that we do, continue to be an important part of the work that we do? As you get bigger and bigger and bigger, there's less connection to the people on the ground and a reason for people to volunteer. We have concerns about some of our land holdings. So inevitably over the years, our members on our board of directors will ask questions about, is there any land that we can divest of? And we would look and say yes or no based on whatever the local scenario is. There's always a board member there who represents that municipality who could speak to that. When we have an agency that is sitting conceivably in Newmarket, making decisions about whether or not we should hold on to lands or sell them off, that local voice might not be there to protect the lands that we are planning to protect in perpetuity. We don't know how the funding model works, so we don't know who subsidizes who. One of my biggest concerns for rural municipalities is that the large urban municipalities that are part of the grouping will carry enough of the budget weight that they will be making the decisions on what the budget and the levy apportionment is. You will be told what it is. That is how it would work if the apportionment stays the same as it is today. Again, we don't know what the funding model is moving forward, but that is a concern. And then I was here a couple of years ago to talk to you about our Category 3 programs. So our stewardship program that helps improve agricultural lands and improve our watersheds through providing funds to producers to keep cattle out of streams, to divert water around barnyards, to put cover crops in. That's a Category 3 program. Our education program is a Category 3 program. Our tree planting programs are Category 3. Our expanded water quality monitoring so that we keep tabs on how the watershed is doing is Category 3. It was tricky to negotiate that with 8 municipalities. I don't know how that happens with 80 municipalities. And I have concerns that we're looking at one thing right now, development, and letting that drive all of the other important work that's being done in the community by conservation authorities. So to wrap up, what I've provided here, and you can look at it at your leisure, is a listing of some articles and some research that's been done looking at municipal amalgamations that occurred in the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s to say, was this the right tact? Did it save money? Did it improve efficiencies? The overarching consensus is no. It didn't improve efficiencies and it didn't save money. It's not to say it was right or wrong, but if those were the things you were trying to solve, didn't do it. What was more effective is partnerships. So are there voluntary ways to share services and cut costs? Maybe. And I'll leave you with that. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I would welcome any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Tim. Councilors?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I was having a good day and this stressed me out a little bit. But I'm just wondering, you know, sort of, I mean, maybe this is a question that could come kind of after everybody else's, but like, assuming that we're all pretty against this path forward, what do you see as our best steps to be able to do something about this?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think the best approach right now, and it is an approach that we're seeing from other municipal councils across the province, is if council is opposed to this idea, is to put forward a resolution that says that. And I think it's important that we also recognize what the province is trying to accomplish and that we give the province a path forward to do that. So like I said, from my perspective, giving this quite a bit of thought, I don't think amalgamation is the solution. And I think it's important that not only conservation authorities say that, but the municipalities say that, because that's one of the drivers that's being put forward as to why they're looking to do this. But I think it's important that we provide solutions for the other driver, which is how do we improve efficiencies and consistency in terms of planning and permitting. And like I mentioned, I think there's great opportunity for the province to provide the tools that I think they need to provide. And conservation authorities, I think we would use them voluntarily, but we don't have to. The province could legislate that. They could say, these are the tools and you will use. And I think that would solve that issue. If those aren't the actual drivers, then I'm at a loss.
Councillor Ure?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Tim. As chair of GSCA, I have not the pleasure, but the opportunity to spend a lot of time. We've attended a lot of virtual meetings. We've tried to do a number of things. But what's really, really frustrating here is Conservation Ontario is kind of going to bat for all the CAs and they're doing a good job. This has been ramrodded through very quickly. I would have liked to have seen it actually. Roma would have been a really good opportunity for smaller rural municipalities that really have a voice on this, because as Tim said, it's going to be really difficult for us to compete with Barrie or Chatsworth to compete with Barrie and have our voice heard in any kind of governance capacity. But what really seems to be missing to me is any kind of municipal announcements or participation, and we're the ones that are paying half of it, whereas it said the province is paying 1 to 5% depending on the program. So we're going to end up paying the bill for this, and our rural voice is going to be totally probably removed, if not reduced. So I am going to your point, I am going to make a notice of motion for resolution later, and I encourage. So what CAs are counting on is Tony and myself, members, to come back to council and make sure that this body is saying something to the government. Tim and I met with MPP Vickers on Friday to try and kind of make the case. And he understands, he's a rural riding representative, but he finds just as much frustration because he knows from that end that it's pretty much being rammed through for all the wrong reasons. So we have to at least put a voice out to try and stand up and try and get as many voices as we possibly can. How much impact we can make is probably going to be difficult to ascertain, but it's all we can do right now.
Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, thank you, Tim, for coming to speak to us today about this very serious situation. Got a question first and then a couple of comments. Back on, if you can go back to the slide, Bill 68 amendments to CAA. Can we go back to that one just briefly? Okay, yes, and number 8, the last number on that, strategic planning. And then it has to align with provincial interests, not local. Were those words in italics, were they yours or did they? It's obvious that's what this is all about. provincial interests. And I just wondered if you put those in or if they were, if they came from the new, the new agency.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I put not local. Because I think it's an important distinction that the province in more than one spot is saying that they'll have oversight of Conservation Authority strategic planning to ensure that it aligns with provincial interests. So I think like we just went through a strategic planning process ourselves, and we definitely made sure that we put into that the mandatory programs and services that we have to do, because it would be irresponsible not to. But to suggest that a locally created community-based entity is that the only thing that matters is the provincial interest and not the local interest, I think is misguided. And I think misses the point of why conservation authorities were created at the level and scale that they were in the first place.
Go ahead, supplementary.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Jim, for that. I agree 110% with that. Interesting, one of the amendments to the Conservation Act was to oversee and evaluate the financial performances of conservation authorities. That's what local municipalities do every year when you folks bring forward your budget. And you mentioned in your presentation a $4.2 million budget. Where do you get that anyplace else in today's world? I am really disgusted with this entire suggestion for the province. To me, it's just a matter of creating a huge new bureaucracy, supposedly to improve over local authorities, and I've got my doubts on about that. We had a Source Water Protection Committee meeting on Friday, and we had just very little discussion about all of this. And I think there's 14 members on that committee, and basically this is all wrong. That's what the discussion came down to. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Lanthe, for being here with us today. And as you talked about amalgamation, I think it's just 25 years, as you well know, for the amalgamation here in Meaford, and we still have a number of residents who are pretty bitter about how that went down, so to speak. So to see that happen with conservation authorities, I can't see it being any more successful. I think you've made a lot of points, and certainly I agree that if you can provide some efficiencies to the province, that hopefully they will look at those. Your point about the reserves is very concerning, and I don't know what your number is, but I assume it's significant. And to think of that being then put into a large pool and essentially not being available to our own area is deeply concerning. But my question, you've mentioned working with our MPP and so on, and I'm wondering if you're also working with AMO as you speak of the 404 municipalities, if AMO's voice is coming back to the province and hopefully asking the province to at least consider the points that are still available on the table for consideration.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We as Grey Sauble are not working with AMO, but Conservation Ontario as our AMO equivalent is. Yeah, and I mean, AMO would be a great entity for individual municipalities to reach out to too, so that they know the voice isn't just coming from the Conservation Authority side. So if the municipality has an opportunity to speak with your staff representatives at AMO, I think that would be very positive.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today, and we've devoted a fair bit of time to getting your fix on it, and it is certainly, as everyone says, this is not in our best interests. I think that this has been coming probably for a while, and that's why the Ford government is able to do it so blatantly. I think we should have maybe seen this 5 or 10 years ago and just trimmed our sails or something. But anyway, I think that we're ready to fight back, and let's keep in touch on it. I'm going to call next on our next presenter, Paul Young, and he's going to be speaking to us a presentation he made to our Pump Storage Advisory Committee, and a very important presentation that we're looking forward to hearing as well. So Paul, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As I said, as Mayor Kantner said, this is a repeat to the thing that I originally presented as a concerned citizen to the Pump Storage Advisory Committee. So I was acting in an advisory role when I presented it. So I've titled it Legal Risks and Community Health Risks that I see that could be managed by the Pump Storage Committee, by the Pump Storage Project, should that project be approved and go through. I'm concerned that there are a lot of risks there that no one talks about, and that we should all be aware of them and be in the position of informing the community regularly about what we're doing to look after that. So this is what I'll be presenting today. Who am I and why would you want to listen to me? What are contaminations in this context? Because there's a lot of arm waving about what's a contaminant and what isn't. How are the contaminations measured? And everything in the world is contaminated, as we all know, with something. But how much is too much? How much is bad for our health? And how do you figure that out? How and where have these contaminations been found on the basin? This is actual test results that have been gathered by independent third-party companies hired by the Canadian government over the last, 15 years. Multiple experiments have been done. What are the known health impacts of what they found? Because they did find them. I'll show you what they found. And how do contaminations travel? And how do they reach our bodies? How would they get to us? And last of all, some examples of recent Ontario contamination health impacts and what it cost. I just have 3 examples. And the last thing is my suggestion or advice, call to action, some practical steps to reduce the risks to Meaford and the Meaford community members. So, who am I and why should you listen to me? I'm going to do a tiny detour based on Councillor Ennis's description that you put up. This is a picture of me in 1982 working on something which I will explain. I was 30 pounds lighter and I had dark hair. But at the time, before that, I designed and built the nuclear reactor emergency shutdown system for Bruce nuclear reactor. So I built 70 boxes that are in the nuclear reactor control room that vote on the flux core, the radioactive flux in the core. And when they all vote, there's a problem. They shut it down in a catastrophic way, which I imagine you were told about. Anyway, it's such a coincidence, small world. Anyway, this is me in 1982. And I was the project manager and co-designer of the first ICP-MS elemental analyzer. It is currently the world standard everywhere for that technology. That's serial number 1 with me beside it there. That is currently the world standard for measuring water, contamination in water everywhere. And I also spent the next 35 years as an executive working in that company, supporting their other products, which are now used as the world standard for organic contamination detection. I'll speak to that a little bit longer. So anyway, I've got a lot of history with this topic. The thing we're not going to talk about in terms of contaminations in this context is coliform bacteria, viruses, and parasites. And there's examples of them all there. All of those things are typically very well handled, with the exception of Walkerton, with the municipal water treatment system. And they are not the things I'm talking about. They're easy to kill if you have your staff. As we know, we got a 100% score on the rating this time around. So we're doing a good job on that. So what are the contaminations that typical municipal water things don't worry about too much? So there's two classes. One of them is the elements of the periodic table, things like lead, gold, uranium. These are simple, oxygen, carbon. These are simple elements. And there are the other things, organic compounds, which are very, very complicated things. They're ways that carbon and hydrogen bond together to create literally billions of different compounds. And the red circles that are there, excuse me, on the right, one of them is alcohol and another one is nylon. So those are things that are in the organic compounds area. More on that shortly. So these are the instruments that are used to detect this stuff. And this is what the people at the that were working for the government have used over the last 10 to 15 years to actually analyze soil, water, and whatever at the base. These are the machines that are used. And you see the ICP-MS, that one is used for the elements, and the other one, the HPLC-MS is used for the organic compounds. And that's what they find. So there's a little bit of contamination everywhere. So how much is too much? Well, many organizations, and I'll show you an example. These are published, this is a sample of published standards of how much is too much for your health. And there's more than that slide. There's many standards, but they all tend to agree pretty much on what the levels are that are too much for drinking water or the air that you breathe. And in the case of the military base studies, there's a thing called transboundary contaminants. And that is the contaminants that leave the base and migrate into the bay or into the groundwater that feeds the wells in the municipality of Meaford area. And there are standards listed on the left there that are used to determine how much is too much of different kinds of pollutants. So the reason I showed that is because we want to know, what did they find, and did they find too much when they did these studies? So I got access to these 3 studies that were funded by the Canadian government, and they're public domain information. There's another 20 that I could have looked at, but 2 of these are over 300 pages each. So it takes a lot of work to go through all of it and come to conclusions. So that's where I got the data. Anyone wants a copy of that to read, they can have it. What did they find? So I guess this is the money. This is the money slide. So they tested wells. They have these things called shallow wells and deep wells. The shallow wells are red circles, and the deep wells are the little yellow circles. And they tested 44 wells. And of those, 36 wells had contamination beyond safe human limits. I've put 3 arrows in red and 3 arrows in yellow there to show where those wells are. But if I'd put arrows to all of the yellow ones, it would be hard to read. So I just showed you where they are. And you can see they're mostly, but not exclusively, on the bay coast, I should say the bay edge of the base to the, I guess it's the southeast. Anyway, they did test 6 wells for these things called PFAS, which come from what's called AFF, or aerosolized firefighting foam, which was used between 1950 and 1990 on military bases for training purposes for putting out fires. So they only tested 6 wells and they didn't find any there. But depending on where the firefighting exercises were conducted, they may have been, they may have been looking for, I don't know, mountain lions in downtown Meaford. They were looking in the wrong place for that sort of stuff. You have to go where the firefighting foam was used. So I would say that the fact that they didn't find any is indeterminate. Doesn't mean they will. Doesn't mean they won't if they do more testing. Anyway, these are, we got there's 8 pictures here, all of the base, the area of the base. And the green areas are the areas where there's very little contamination has been found. The yellow areas more, and the red areas even more. And this is just of 8 types of contaminants. There's many, they tested for hundreds and hundreds. But I'm just showing you based on how the base has been used and how the ammunition has been fired, and then how rainfall has moved things around. These are the general zones where the contamination exists. And you'll notice that the hot spots there are where they're going to be doing a bunch of digging. They're going to be digging to the lake, and then they're going to be boring the tunnels for the penstocks. So how do they travel off the base? Well, some contaminants bind to water, which flows off the base through rainfall, groundwater flows, and potentially leaks from the reservoir if there are leaks. I'm not talking about catastrophic leaks. I'm talking about seepage kind of stuff based on how the reservoir basin is sealed. And so these are the typical kinds that bind to water. We have another kind of stuff that binds to the soil. So these are heavy metals and microplastics that bind to the soil. That can be traveling off the base into our world during blasting, boring, or trucking, and more about trucking in a minute. And lastly, these contaminants can bind to the air that travels off the base, primarily due to blasting and trucking. And those are the kinds of contaminants that heavy metals are one of the ones that we have to watch out for the most. So this shows why I'm concerned. All of these blue dots are drinking water wells. And I've also put a red arrow there where the Meaford's water intake is from the bay. And the little red circle offshore is the water in out area for the reservoir. And the solid red circle is the location of the reservoir where this thing is going to be built if it gets built. So I'm concerned about migration of these contaminants into the drinking water, primarily into the oil, into the air in a secondary worry. So why am I concerned? Well, the font here is a little small to read, even for my magically improved cataract surgery eyes. I can't read it from here to go over it, but I assume that you folks can, and that you've been given a copy ahead of time. So that's how that's what water pollutants do. Some of the side effects of some of these things are very, very bad. Soil pollution and air pollution. There's lots of research, to quote one thing, that has shown that people that live in close proximity to highways where there's a large amount of airborne pollution from trucks are way more likely to exhibit early onset dementia and cognitive decline, just because of the air quality that they're breathing over their life. So recently we had the Walkerton E. coli. That was not due to this kind of contamination, to be clear. That was due to a breakdown in the controls of the water management people had. But I bring that up because it's a matter of taking the risks too lightly. When you don't worry about making sure things are done well, and then they slip through, it can be quite catastrophic. Same thing happened in North Bay recently. The firefighting foams that were used at the military base and the airport for 25 years or so have leached into the primary source of drinking water for North Bay. And now there's a very expensive and large scale effort to try and clean that up. and get the PFAS forever plastics out of the water. And some of the residents have had to switch over to government funded bottled water in their homes. I mean, by government, I mean probably local government. And then Highway 407, there has been a lot of heavy metals washed away when that highway was built into the lakes and streams and everything along the path of the Highway 407 construction project, and that had to be cleaned up. So I'm winding up here. Why is the PSP a potential Pandora's box of contaminations? Because we're going to kind of open it up. We're going to open up the ground. There's 25 million rounds of ammunition has been fired on that base. 25 million rounds. And that's the small arms stuff. Then there's some big stuff too. It's in the appendix. So when we start digging and blasting, we're going to disturb the genie that's stuck in that soil and water, the underground water. So the scale of this is pretty high. It's approximately, given the dimensions that TCE has released, it's approximately 74 million tons of dirt and rock in order to dig the hole below grade to make this. Now, if they're not going to leave that on the base, and they're going to put it on trucks and drive it off the base to put it somewhere else, because maybe they should leave it on the base. If it's contaminated and the base is already contaminated, maybe they should just move it sideways or something. But if they're going to truck it through town, that's 233 trucks an hour, 8 hours a day, 50 weeks a year for 3 years. That's a lot of trucks full of dirt. Then they're going to bore the tunnels for the penstocks. There's two penstock tunnels based on the dimensions that have been released in the literature. That's another 74,000 tons of what's called, excuse me, it's called spoil. That's the mining term for when you dig a borehole. And the interesting thing about that dirt is, in order to make the boring process feasible, from an engineering point of view, you have to pump special chemicals in to the hole as you bore it, and so that you can coat the walls, whatever. These chemicals are extremely hazardous. They have to be pumped back up the borehole and disposed of in a safe way. You can't just throw it away. And in Las Vegas last year, a big boring company dumped all the spoil that they had illegally into the Las Vegas water treatment system. And they were fined $500,000 for doing this because they needed that amount of money to clean up the sewage system for the city of Las Vegas after this stuff had been illegally dumped there. So I'm not saying TCE's subcontractors are going to do that. What I'm saying is, where is it going to go? So these are sort of risk management questions that I believe some, good oversight, what you might call paranoid or very careful oversight, is required on this project. So here's my call to action, or as a citizen: plan for the worst, but hope for the best. If you don't plan for the worst, then you don't have a plan, in my opinion. You have to assume that something somewhere will not go to plan. In every large mega project, there's always accidents. They just don't, I mean, some of them are trivial. Doesn't even matter, not even worth noting. Some of them are very big. And you have to have a plan for catching this, and what are we going to do about it? So I think good communication is important. We informed TCE, and I understand that's been done already, that we will be hiring a third-party monitoring company, there's lots of them around, that will do tests off base for contaminants of concern. So what I mean is testing not on the base, that's been done, but off the base. And we want to test in 3 ways before any construction starts, because if I was in TCE issues, I'd want to know, what's the baseline? What was it like before we started construction? Number 2, we test during construction. So you go back and test exactly the same way during the construction process. And then afterward, because things don't move through the water tables and the aquifers instantaneously. So we have to continue testing for a period of time where we should take advice on, but it might be 2 to 3 years after construction is finished. And we include the fees for paying for this testing in the community benefits agreement, which we get, which causes Meaford not to bear the brunt of the testing, but TCE, as part of their profit scheme, to bear the benefits of this, and we invoice them, but we manage the subcontractor ourselves. TCE doesn't manage the testing company. Number 4, we choose some monitoring sites quickly. 15 private wells, the municipal water treatment intake sites, a couple of bay fishing sites, and we get permission from the well owners because this is something they'll probably gladly welcome, but you can't do it without permission. Some people that might be in the position of selling their property might not want their wells tested because they don't want that information available to a potential buyer. Anyway, take advice from the third-party monitoring company. And this is number 5, sort of a heavy one. We want TCE, IESO, and the Federal Environmental Assessment Authority of our plans to hold TCE financially accountable for remediation costs, to quickly return degraded water quality back to the pre-construction levels. One of the advantages of coming to this position, this legal position, is that it probably will improve the safety of the project should it go forward. It might even cause any damages to be avoided because it's cheaper to do it carefully than it is to do it not carefully and then repair the damages after. I was on a contract like that when I was working for that company with the Mespis, and we were getting $1 million for two instruments. And if we messed up, we had a $4 million penalty. 2 times the cost of the contract was worth. And we did everything very carefully. Last of all, find and retain a good environmental lawyer who's not afraid of TCE to consult with us on the best way to do number 5. And communication. Keep the community of Meaford informed of these plans and of the ongoing test results. It can only make you guys look really good. Like we're looking after them because they expect you to look after them, and you're doing the right thing, and you're not using their taxpayers' money to look after them. You're using TCE money to make sure that their water is safe. And the rest is for appendix if there's any questions about the aquifers and stuff like that. That's just the way the water moves, the deep water and the other water. But you can see it moves through the base at various heights, and it moves towards where the reservoir and the penstocks are. So it's been moving in those directions for 40 years, 50 years during the use of the base. And during those 50 years, that's the 25 million small munitions fired, and then there's another 49,000 heavy munitions fired on the base, and they all land. They all pretty much land where that water's going. So where the tips of those arrows are, and a little bit above to the 12 o'clock position, that's where a lot of the ammunition lands when and then it sits there decomposing with, Mother Nature breaking it down so that it's soluble in the water. Anyway, I'm finished right now, and I welcome your questions if there are any.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Fording?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you.
By the way, thank you for letting me have more than 5 minutes. I appreciate it.
I think it's totally warranted in this case, Paul. So thank you very much for being here and presenting this. And so you did present this at the last PSAC meeting, was that? Now, was that just a presentation or was there a discussion about this as well? Because I'd just be curious to get a synopsis of what the conversation was like among the committee and if any recommendations were coming from the committee with regards to any of the concerns that you brought up. Thank you.
It was discussed a little bit. The conventional rules of meetings like that were not conducive to a lot of discussion. This is my point of view on that kind of stuff in general. So there was some discussion. Some of the members were attending by Zoom, and they therefore couldn't participate. Like the chair of that meeting, Doug, he was in Florida, so he couldn't participate. I think that there was a general feeling of approval for the idea of independent testing. Shirley was there and she has a better memory than I do. Do you have anything to add to what I just said? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, and thank you for your question, Councillor Forder. And I just wanted to start, Mr. Young, by thanking you for being here today and especially for the very professional and respectful manner in which you present both to PSAC and to this council. It's greatly appreciated. And to Councillor Forder, yes, we did have some discussion at PSAC regarding the information that Mr. Young has brought forward, but I think it plays in very nicely to the motion that this council did approve for requested water testing, and I know our CAO is working with TC Energy on, discussions of how that might be funded, but this council certainly did agree to the importance of ongoing water testing, as Mr. Young has suggested, both at baseline and then during and throughout construction and afterwards during the operation of the project, assuming that it goes forward. So I think it's all very important, and I know I'm very grateful for this additional education. And I think this is a document that we can have and refer back to as time goes by, Mr. Young, if you're open to that and to, and any further questions as they come forward, both to PSAC and to this council.
Sure. And by the way, if I can be of any assistance to CAO Everett and staff in terms of providing a list of companies that I've extracted from one of those reports that have done all of this testing over the past 15 years on the base. It's hard when you go looking for these people, it's hard to find. But if you actually know who did the test and in what year, once you contact them that way, they go, oh, you want us to sort of repeat that, but off the base. I think it would grease the ways, so to speak, to make it easier for staff to contact someone and choose them.
Paul, if I may have a question, I was going to ask you if the contaminants from ammunition, are you talking stored ammunition or fired ammunition?
Fired.
So then all the firing is going in the opposite direction of the flow. So what you're saying is that the firing is out to the water to the north, but it falls on the ground and the contaminants then flow in reverse direction back to the side of the plant.
Because I don't have a laser pointer, I'm going to walk over and point with my hand.
Thank you.
The ranges are typically in here. And so most of the firing has been in this direction, which is why you don't see much contamination here. It's not because the water washed the contamination from here to here. It's because the landing zone for most of the firing is in this area. That's the target. It's called the target area. On a previous like that was in here. That's one further back. Yeah. These are the names of the ranges. So, and they're named after famous World War II battles or World War I battles. So there's the gully, Black Point Pump House, Gun Shed, Alpha Crossing, Soprano, the tower. So these are all, it says training area 1, training area 2. So this area in green here is where most of the ammunition landed after it was fired. Most. There are some training areas over here too, but not as much. This area here is referred to as out of bounds on every single map that they have. I should put that.
Okay, so no, can I ask you to just point out the actual construction site on that map then?
It's construction site.
I don't think so.
Here's the garrison area. And it's just slightly this way and slightly that way. So it's very adjacent to the garrison building.
So why would they fire toward the garrison?
Well, they were firing in this direction. So the garrison is at right angles to the direction they were firing.
So, but aren't they red and yellow arrows? That do they not originate like and like that looks like at least 3 of them pointing south.
Oh,
to it.
I'm just
Pardon?
pointing at the wells.
Oh, okay.
I'm just pointing
Oh, I
at
see.
the
Okay.
wells.
Okay.
These are the deep wells and these are the shallow.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Yurick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 2 quick questions, and I'll echo Deputy Mayor's comments. Thank you for the presentation, and particularly the way you present it, because yes, we hear things often in different tones. One is, so on the 1 page where you called for your call to action, you talked about private wells, in treatment intakes, fishing sites, the municipal water. I'm just curious, because obviously we do a lot of our own municipal water testing, but obviously it's not testing for this kind of, would it find these kind of contaminants? Because we're obviously doing lots of testing.
I haven't seen what they call them contaminants of concern are for the testing that was referred, where we got 100% at the beginning of the meeting. My suspicion is they test for some of the things that I'm worried about, but not all of them, because, well, cost is a consideration. And the risk, how much, what are the chances? What are the chances of the Georgian Bay water having these contaminants in it? Uranium is a good example. You can find lots of uranium on the base wells. I doubt that they're testing for uranium, and I doubt that the bay has right now much dissolved uranium in the water. So I mean, every testing regime, it has to be pragmatic. We can't test
For everything.
for everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I have a follow-up, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So the other question I wanted to ask, so you talked about the amount of shelling that's actually happened on the base. And again, being an engineer, just curious. So I'm gonna go to France in 1918 on and 1946 on. I'm pretty sure there was a few shells landed over there. So in terms of remediation of actual shelling that's happened, like, how easy is remediation? I mean, obviously, Europe was ground zero, so how much had to be remediated there? What's the impact comparatively to what's happened kind of up here?
I've never posed that question to myself. Thank you. I would say that Europe's a pretty big place compared to the acreage of the base. And so my logic is working in real time right now. I would say there was a lot of ammunition fired and bombs that went off, but it was spread over quite a few million acres. And whether there was any one place that was extremely densely loaded up with ammunition, the way the ranges here are, just intuitively, I kind of doubt it. Maybe some famous battles, the siege of Leningrad or whatever. Maybe that would have been high density munitions, but it's a good question. I don't know.
I would dare say if you might want to look then at because in 1916 to 18, most of the war was fought over a few short miles. And
That's
went
right.
back and forth. So
That's
that
right.
was a heavily contaminated area.
Yeah.
So when you go to Loire Valley, when you go to south
Yep.
of, so
Yep.
yeah, I would just think for your own purposes,
Yeah.
you might want to take a look at that and see
Yeah.
what they've done.
Yeah.
And how the impact was.
And I thank you for that. I will. I would point out that maybe that no one dug 74 millions of tons of dirt up in those areas and moved it around after the war ended. I mean, they rebuilt the buildings, the railways and the factories and stuff, but they didn't build pump storage reservoirs there, which, and by the way, this soil is on, it's called karst. This is fractured soil, so that when you, I've got pictures of what it looks like when you scrape the top off. It's just riddled with cracks and crevices, so you can see how the water will flow through it quite quickly. And I have no knowledge what the soil is like in Vimy Ridge or whatever. Yeah.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. And first of all, thanks to Councillor Euring for bringing that Second World War, First World War comparison in. Certainly, you know, some of the some of the battles in the retaking of continental Europe, there were literally hundreds, if not thousands, of tons of bombs dropped from Allied aircraft, which seemed to make a statement. Anyway, I want to ask you about the boring, Paul. First of all, thanks for your presentation, and I apologize. There are some words mentioned in there that I can't pronounce, let alone define. But now, I'm not sure if it's been decided if there's going to be one tunnel bored or two tunnels bored. You put in a number of 74,000 tons of spoil, which if you figure on that being trucked away, 25 tons per truckload, that's 3,000 truckloads. Now, again, I don't know if that is just for one tunnel or two tunnels, but that the contaminants, I guess, does that have to be trucked off the base? Those contaminants perhaps originated on the base. I've heard talk about a reservoir with walls 50 or 60 feet high out of concrete that are going to have to be supported, especially when it gets filled with water. I really wonder, could you make that argument that, well, hey, look, it originated there, why not leave it there? Would save a heck of a lot of truck traffic, but I'm not sure if it would really be that safe to do that.
Yeah. No, I was saying the first thing about how many trucks, that was only for the excavated hole. So it's 20 meters deep. And then the area, I calculated 20 meters deep in the area and how many tons. If I was the project manager on that project, I would not truck that dirt off the base. If it's suitable, and it may not be suitable structurally, if it's suitable, use it to build the berms. That makes sense. If it's not suitable, then maybe the military will have a ski hill off in one corner because they'll pile it up somewhere and just, put it over there. That would be cost effective, and it would not involve 74 million tons being trucked off the base. However, the spoil, which is a smaller number, it's 74,000 tons is based on the dimensions published by TCE, the diameter of a 3-meter penstock times 2 times how many, 2,000 meters long. I just calculated that, and that's how much spoil there would be. And it isn't all, the spoil is both rock and the pumped in chemicals that they pump in to make the boring process. Now that 74,000 tons of rock, and I'll call it spoil, I'd want to know where that went.
Thank you for that. And, certainly, I firmly believe our water is the most important component to all of this, but I can't forget the traffic factor that could be generated by this project, and
Yeah.
that's another. It's a secondary concern, but it's still a concern.
Well, there was I don't know how many years back it was, but there was a dump around here called the Geno dump or something that that where there was inappropriate chemicals being dumped there. And it wasn't until the Sierra Club got involved that the dump was shut down and some remediation was put in place. So like I said, things happen. You can't.
The landfill was there until the mid-1970s.
Yeah.
It's 2:30. I'm going to move on here.
Oh, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time, sir. And I don't believe we have any deputations or public questions. I'm just looking at the audience, but I do not believe we had anyone register. So we'll move on to council inquiries. Councillor Yurick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have one, going to address to Tory. I was asked by ratepayer about the inverted siphon coefficient factor, predominantly regarding the west end of town or the area, but just wanted a little update of just kind of where the status of that is, what that looks like, particularly with wastewater, since we have two large subdivisions going in over there. So if you could just give us a little bit of overview of what's going on there.
Absolutely, through your worship. I'll provide a bit of background on what it means and then provide you some update on it. So the roughness coefficient of the siphon pipes has a large impact on how much flow can actually go through those pipes. So essentially the roughness of the actual material of the pipes. And so my understanding of kind of what the question was, do we know what that roughness coefficient is? And then, what does that mean for the development that's coming online? We did a study to identify what that roughness coefficient was, but unfortunately, when they got doing the work, they weren't able to proceed as they had hoped. And so they had to stray in the methods of the study that they were doing, just the setup of our siphon, and they weren't able to get as accurate information as we were hoping. And so they did give us information on a roughness coefficient, but they were not confident in the data because of the changes they had to make to the study. And so we have been looking at trying to find a different method to obtain the roughness coefficient of those pipes. We have been identified that depending on that roughness coefficient, there is a large difference in how much development can happen before that work needs to proceed. So we feel like it's very important before we proceed with the project to fully understand it. And so we have come up with, or we're working with two different companies to see if their methods will be applicable to our specific design of the siphon. And so as part of early 2026, we'll be proceeding with funds that we actually had funded in 2025. We just haven't been able to proceed as quickly as we were hoping because of these constraints. And then we will have a better understanding and hopefully have a more confident understanding of what that coefficient is to determine when that project needs to happen. And if that project is identified as more urgent than we are hoping it will be, we will come forward to council at that point and work to proceed as quickly as possible so that there isn't any impact on development. And that project is development funded, so it won't have an impact on the 2026 tax supported budget or wastewater rates.
I'm sorry, what development are we talking about here?
So not a specific development. This is the siphon, so the pipes that go under the Big Head River from the north part of our wastewater system to the south part where we connect into the wastewater treatment plant. So all of the flow of everything north of the Big Head River flows through the siphon. And so it has been identified as a potential bottleneck as development proceeds. And so we're just working to figure out exactly what that timing is of when that project needs to proceed so that we're able to accommodate development into the future in that area.
Gotcha, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we move on to our consent agenda. There's only one item, excuse me. And the recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford provide pre-budget approval for $56,000 for the 25th anniversary of the amalgamation of the Municipality of Meaford programming. A mover and a seconder for this, Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Euring. This was fully discussed at our last meeting, so are you ready to vote on it? Any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, for me, I just had one quick question, and I see that our manager of communications has arrived at the meeting. So with your permission, I'd like to direct a question to Holly. I'm just so pleased with this, overarchingly, to see this plan going forward for celebrating our 25th. I think that's just terrific. But I'm wondering about, communication to our residents in Leith and Annan in particular, and in Bognor as well, just so that they are aware of the events that are upcoming and the planning that is underway and the importance of this to the entire municipality. Rather than it coming as a surprise to them, I'm hoping that we can provide some communication. And I had a thought perhaps through an email group. I know we have an email group for Bayshore Road updates, and maybe through that channel, we can start to get the word out to those residents that something special is coming up in 26.
Certainly, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor's question, a significant communications plan is in development pending today's decision to move forward with the amalgamation celebration for next year. We plan to leverage a number of the different community groups as a primary resource with contacts in Leith and Annan, as well as personal connections of council. So we would definitely consider those various groups to not exclude anyone, as that's the core goal of this initiative.
Are you ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now some items for consideration, and the first recommendation is be it resolved that bylaw 2025-71, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 60/2009 pertaining to lands known municipally as 290 Thompson Street, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. A mover and a seconder, please, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Forder. Any questions or discussion on this? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And the last item here, the recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford direct staff to take no further action toward the reinstatement of a local business improvement area, BIA, in Meaford at this time. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Forder and Councillor Euring. Thank you. Any discussion on this one? As I say, these have all been discussed in the past. All in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. So now I need a motion to move into committee of the whole. Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Ennis, thank you. And that's at 2:38 p.m. And the first item, the recommendation is that committee of the whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford, number 1, enact a bylaw to amend bylaw 053-2012, Schedule A3, refreshment vehicle licensing based on the changes proposed within this report. And number 2, direct staff to include $375 in the fees and charges as a seasonal rental rate for a municipal site to operate a refreshment vehicle. A mover and a seconder for this. Deputy Mayor Keaveney and Councillor Euring. Any questions or suggestions here, or do we have any comments from staff? Okay, I'll go with you, Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have no real problem with the report, although I do have one clarification I'd like to make just to make sure what the impact is. So $375 for a vehicle. So for example, yes, if I don't know, if we're having Canada Day and there's a food truck down there and they're paying $375, I get that. I'll cite a couple of examples. Christmas on the Bay is happening this weekend, the fall fair. So if a food truck is in there, they're already paying the entity that's putting on that event. This would be almost double dipping because they're already on the hook for a fair amount of money to those vendors. So, for example, a food truck in Christmas on the Bay, would it be fair for them to pay $375 and yet a vendor selling some retail stuff not paying anything, and yet they're in the same vendor fare? So I'm hoping that this is excluded if you're doing that kind of overreaching event, as opposed to a standalone that's augmenting an event.
Martha?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Urick. If I understand correctly, I'm just going to try and explain, and if I've misunderstood the question, my apologies. There are two different categories that we're dealing with through the licensing. One is special events. So there's a very different rate for any vendor participating in a special event. So that is a category. What we've proposed is one rate, and then if you are coming to subsequent events in the municipality, a lower rate. As we've already seen the paperwork and gone through the motions to license. The municipal property category is a seasonal use. So if you are operating on a specific property that's been identified for the duration of, I believe it's from May till the fall. I'd have to just go back and double check. So that's a completely different sort of standalone category. So that would be, I don't want to call it permanent because it's a seasonal use, but you're not moving around the municipality. You are staying perhaps at the harbor or a site like that. Does that help to clarify, or have I misunderstood?
Yes, it is. I just wanted that clarification, because you're right. If it's a special event, i.e. a one-off fair, COTB, then yeah, I didn't see the value in that because it's might actually keep people away. Whereas if it's a seasonal thing, yeah, I have no problem with it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Ennis?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sort of two questions that are related. The first being like how many, there was the bit about historically they were offered on a first come, first served basis. And the new idea is to basically just have everybody apply to be in by, I think it was March 1st. And then if they don't apply by then, they've kind of missed it for the season. So I'm just curious how many spots there are, and you know, kind of what the thinking is for if we don't fill all the spots and not allowing anybody that maybe that might have heard about it, you know, kind of partway through the summer and wants to get in, you know, something like that.
Through your worship, Councillor Ennis. So I can speak to the number of spots. Currently, we have three sections within the municipality picked out for optimal use. And basically, I guess if somebody comes late to the party and there are spots that are available, we'll definitely take that into account.
Okay. Any other questions? Are you ready to vote on this? All in favor? And again, that is passed unanimously. Updates from members appointed to County Council and various committees and boards. Deputy Mayor, do you have a report on Grey County Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do. Grey County Council last met on November the 27th. It was a full day with regular council, committee of the whole, 2 matters in closed session, followed by something that has not happened for a very long time, if ever, a joint meeting with members of Bruce County Council, as well as 4 representatives from the Ministry of Health, where information was provided by the province relating to the Grey Bruce Board of Health. So that was very informative. After the usual adoption of meeting minutes, an update was presented regarding the November 12th Long-Term Care Committee of Management meeting. Following the operational report provided by Director Cornell, the long-term care draft budget was presented. The proposed levy for our three homes, Rockwood Terrace, Lee Manor, and Gray Gables, is $8.94 million. The county budget is not yet passed, but that is the number we will see in the draft. The homes employ 631 staff members, and that certainly is the bulk of the expense. During Good News and Celebrations, exemplary service medals were presented to 5 Grey County paramedics. All have served at least 20 years, and one had served for 45 years, which is amazing. A video was shared from the 4th Annual Youth Climate Action Conference, where 125 grade 5 students from across the county, from 24 schools, engaged in hands-on workshops. On that day, they planted 160 trees near the Bayshore Arena in Owen Sound. The minutes from the recent PDAC, that's the Planning Economic Development Advisory Committee, were also presented. The final 2025 progress report revealed a continued focus on master plan delivery, understanding consumer behavior, and the study of new trends. And that's all really interesting as we look at the way in which people, at least my observation is these days, they're buying fewer goods, but they're focusing their spends on experiences. And I think we're seeing that here with the success of Meaford Hall and our restaurants. So it's going to be really interesting to see the county data on that observance. Team Gray's MOUs are being drafted for each lower tier to assist everyone with the vision of growing together. So those MOUs are coming to each economic development staff, and they're just looking to just be a little more consistent across the county. Bill 60 had its third reading last week, and one of the points that I'm very pleased with is that upper tiers can now initiate their own CIPs, community improvement plans. So I look forward to that discussion at County Council on how that can support our new CIP when we see that at this council. Liz Buckton presented the Housing Action Plan, the 2025 status update. There was a great deal of information in this report. The surplus land report from September focused on opportunities in Durham and Markdale for affordable housing builds. The growth management study is being updated. Population projections will be established for the next 25 years, and the data will lead into the housing needs assessment report. Liz spoke to early talks around a regional committee to look at affordable housing strategies. We don't have an affordable housing committee in Meaford, but most other communities do. But I think the focus is going to be on representation on this regional committee when that comes to pass. Innovations such as community approaches to attracting affordable housing will be considered from the perspective of how we can lend, spend, and invest locally to benefit our own communities. And that's kind of a lot to think about. But when you think about the wealth in each of our communities and can we encourage people to invest that money locally to support affordable housing builds? Community Foundation Grey Bruce has just created a community development corporation, and that entity will explore financial tools such as community bonds. We believe there is an emerging social purpose financial sector in this region who is exploring innovative ways to fund affordable housing projects, and that is happening on a pretty serious level. Warden Andrea Matrasaz delivered her final warden's address for 2025. She spoke to a long list of accomplishments for this council, including our motel program that provided 13,000 nights of stay last winter, our Gather promotional campaign, our new paramedic base that's been completed in Durham, and our very successful SOS program. The Rockwood Terrace build, which is now 50% complete, partnerships with Georgian College, green building standards, great transit, and so much more. Warden Matrasov is very proud of the way in which county councilors have stepped up to work together. She also spoke highly of the great staff at Grey County, and it was an emotional moment. A notice of motion was brought forward by Councillor Gregg from Owen Sound, which will request the Shared Services Committee, which I sit on, consider countywide library services. So that'll be discussed at our next meeting in 2 weeks. December 2nd, tomorrow, is our inaugural. Now Councillor Matrosovs has been acclaimed, so she will be continuing in her role as warden for 2026. And that's it, Mr. Mayor, unless I've missed anything that you'd like to share.
No, it's very, very comprehensive. It's a lot of note taking. They're very comprehensive reports, but so you'll find a synopsis every 2 weeks on the Grey County site, which is quite good. But other places it just tends to be a very minimal account, and there's a lot of important things that transpire at county level for sure. Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee, is there a report at all?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Looking
Thank you,
through.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, short report. The Growing Our Economy Committee met on November 19th. We had a presentation by our Director of Development Services, Amy Can, who updated the committee as to the new municipal staff structure and how and where ACTEV will fit into the overall plan. Some of the priorities moving forward will be promotions, partnerships, projects, and a refreshed CIP program. The committee also recommended that an updated ACTEV strategic plan and community vision be prioritized, as public participation is crucial to the long-term goals for the municipality. The committee also received verbal reports from the small and medium business liaison staff. Ms. Kenyon shared an overview of the recent Grey County Economic Development Forum and the proposed Grey County Municipal MOU. Committee asked about the status of the business directory and hopes to receive updates as to how this will be integrated into the new website. The committee received an update regarding the 2025 Christmas holiday campaign. And finally, the committee was asked about was advised about the disbanding of the GOE in March, as well as the municipal request for a term ending report, as well as recommendations for the terms of reference and suggested improvements to the committee's structures in the future.
Thank you very much. Any other boards or committees? Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, I mentioned previously about our having a meeting of the Source Water Protection Committee, which I've been fortunate enough to sit on now for the last, I guess, about a year and a half. Just a few items that we had before us. Almost all good news. There has been a new well, municipal well, approved in the town of Chesley. Everything seems to be fine there. Production is good. In Tiverton, they did test for a well in the town, but the decision has been made that they will run a line from Kincardine to Tiverton to supply their water. That seemed to be the best solution. Teeswater having pretty good luck on a new well, but further studies are necessary. The same as town of Blue Mountain, that is planning on bringing another water intake in from Georgian Bay. That is ongoing. Kind of interesting news from Durham, from the town of Durham. They have been working on a new well there. It's well 1C, which is fairly close to the new Rockwood Terrace building. And by the sounds of it, nobody has to worry. There's going to be lots of water to supply the new long-term care home. But they're it's interesting with Durham. It's located on areas of karst, and previously it was thought that the natural flow through these karst streams was west to east. This new well is demonstrating that no, maybe there's a north-south flow. So it's kind of interesting with these studies as to what what they find down there as to what's going on with water supply. The Amic Talisman well, and that's that is um, basically an artesian well. There's a spring that supplies the water down there, and there's been ongoing tests for likely 20 years, maybe more longer on that water supply system. They have had peaks in contaminants on occasion, and when I say peaks, they were they weren't really troublesome. They were still within the levels, but seems like every couple of years there's a bit of an up and down in the levels there, and that's being studied. What might be happening there? What might be causing the common villain, of course, is spreading of leachate on agricultural grounds, but that's been pretty well ruled out as a problem down there. They don't think that has been a problem. Our past chair, Mr. Carl Kuhnke, his tenure is up as at the end of the year, and we won't be having any more meetings before the end of the year. So we have appointed a new interim chair. The final decision has to be made by our friends at the province. And the new interim chair, no stranger to anybody, Dick Imma, is going to take over for the next few months. We, as I said, did have brief discussion about this new Conservation Authorities Act, and quite a bit of concern about, does this mean wetlands? More wetlands are going to be drained, more stormwater management is going to be presented, more building in floodplains. The committee is very concerned about this. Anyway, that's pretty well wrapped up. Thank you.
Any other boards or committees? Over to you, Councillor Yard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you indulge me, we've already heard a fair amount about Grace Hubble Conservation Authority, but we did meet on November 26th, and believe it or not, we do talk about other things in the amalgamation sometimes, although they directly correlate to what that impact is going to be, and these are good examples. So, for example, the board received the 2026 draft budget at that meeting. As it stands, the staff has prepared a lean budget. They're only proposing a 3.9 increase, with Meaford share only increasing 3.4%. So this totals $279,600 or an increase of approximately $9,000. Put that in perspective, the total 2026 levy-based operating cost for all GSEA's programs equals approximately $24.53 per resident per year, or 47 cents a week. So that increase relates only to 92% per resident per year. So when you deal in GSEA money, we keep talking about, we hear a 4% budget increase coming and they think it's a lot of money, but it's not. And what they're trying to do with that is difficult. So it was originally going to be a 3-year budget that was going to be presented, but obviously with the amalgamation, no one knows what that budget's going to look like in the following 2 years or how much area it's going to encompass. We can only assume it will be higher because of the increased wages that will likely result. The board was also presented with an asset status report. And this represented a total value of a little over $29 million, which of course doesn't include the land value. The authority is in good shape with 28% of assets being in excellent condition, 56% good, 14% fair, and only 1.7 in poor condition. And again, why is that important? Because no one knows what's going to happen with those assets moving forward. GSEA is one organization that's taking great care in making sure of maintaining their programs and equipment. And we don't know what's going to happen down the road. Finally, staff were recommended and the board agreed to disband all of its standing committees as again, nobody knows what regional responsibilities are going to look like moving forward. And the fear is regional connections and services such as education will be lost, because what you're going to lose there is, so the Indigenous Committee, the Ag Committee, Forestry Committee, all these committees are not going to be there. And they're the ones that are kind of focusing on rural regional concerns. So we don't know how amalgamation is going to impact that. So that's where it stands.
Okay, and I believe that's, oh, you do have a report. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just a quick one with regards to the Meaford Public Library. We actually did meet twice in the last 2 weeks. We met on November 19th, and we did receive a presentation from the CEO of the Owen Sound North Grey Union Public Library, Tim Harrison, and the Library Board Chair, Richard Thomas, regarding the Library Services Agreement 2026 budget. And they had come to the board and made a request that there would be a 10.6% increase in the 2026 Meaford Public Library Owen Sound Library Services Agreement. That is a sum increase from $158,000 to a little over $175,000. And it was subject of quite a bit of discussion. So it was decided that we would meet the following week, which was on the 26th, for a special public meeting to talk about this specifically. Unfortunately, there's some really key data missing with regards to Meaford card holders at the Owen Sound Library. So it's very difficult for the board to determine value to residents using this library, because much of that data is just not available to us. But after lengthy discussion, we are still 1 year left with the current library services agreement, where we're committed to a 4% increase. So unanimously across the board, the board did decide that we would not honor the 10.6% increase, and we would go ahead with the 4% increase. And then we would discuss where this would lead us in future years. And so that was the summary of the last 2 meetings, and we don't meet again until January 21st. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Very interesting, for sure. No other reports. Then at 3:01, I need a motion to move out of committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Forder and Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is carried. We have no councillor motions. And is there any notice of motion? Councillor Yuri.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I did mention earlier, I'm going to want to bring forward a notice of motion to discuss the CAA amalgamations that are transpiring. So I'll bring that forth to the next meeting.
Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also have a notice of motion, and the motion, if approved by council, will provide direction to staff to consider opportunities to provide a low or zero interest loan for the sole purpose of doctor recruitment and retention for those who may provide office space for family physicians and ancillary services such as nurse practitioners. Thank you.
Okay. Council meeting of November 10th, we have a recommendation that council hereby adopt the minutes of the council meetings held on November 10, 2025 and November 17, 2025, and the closed meeting held on November 17, 2025. Mover and seconder, Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Bell. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Is there anything on the communications agenda that anyone wishes to bring forward? Okay, then, and nothing on the correspondence list? Very good. Then we have a recommendation at this point, be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford does now go into a closed session at 3:03 p.m. with the CAO and clerk in attendance to discuss 2 matters regarding the proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and that is open meeting exemption C of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, respecting 1 proposed acquisition of property and 1 proposed disposition of property. And I'll be reporting out on the other side of this closed meeting.
My apologies. We do need a mover and a seconder
Yes,
and a
thank
vote.
you.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Forder. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Reporting out of the closed session with the CAO and clerk in attendance to discuss two matters regarding the proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. That is under open meeting exemption C of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, respecting one proposed acquisition of property and one proposed disposition of property. And I just say that we gave advice to staff and discussed nothing except these two matters. And now we have a confirming bylaw that the recommendation is, be it resolved that bylaw 2025-72, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting of council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Meaford, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. A mover and seconder, Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Bell, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. And with that, I'll declare today's meeting adjourned.